Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Church at Home. Father Ed here,
Father Joshua.
Father Michael.
and it's great for us to be with you. I hope that you are blessed. We are preparing for the 27th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and we have some really beautiful, I thought they were, and consoling scriptures from the Old Testament, from a letter of Paul to Timothy, and then, of course, from the Gospel of St. Luke. And in our conversations in preparation, we have concluded, maybe, that they are about faith. And what is the purpose of faith, and what does it mean to believe or have faith?
Really, this is one of those times where you really want to pay attention because it's very rare that all three of the scriptures are talking about the same thing. So that means the church really wants us to pay attention. So the first reading has to do with enduring, patiently enduring, waiting for the vision of God to come about and to have faith in that vision. And Paul is telling us that even in suffering, we have to trust that the Lord has provided us with strength, the power, the love, the mercy through any kind of suffering. And in our gospel, it's a little trickier to understand, but right before this gospel, there's a gospel where Jesus is telling them about how they need to forgive 70 times, right? And in that, then the next thing that where we open our gospel is then asking for an increase of faith, because forgiveness is really about setting our ego, ourself, dying to ourself, and allowing that forgiveness to take place. And so that requires a lot of faith that we can endure the suffering of death to self. So each of these readings today talks about this endurance of suffering and bringing about of faith.
Father Michael, you want to say anything about that?
I can only second that. The thing that stood out to me the most was the first reading. I think it's Habakkuk talking about patience, which Father Joshua has already explained. But it spoke to me in the sense that every time we go to God in prayer, we tend to be impatient. At least, maybe I'm convicting myself here, but we want what we want now when we ask for it. I need patience. I need temperance. I need this. I need that. And God's timeline is not it's not our timeline, and so we need to be patient as we wait for the fulfillment of the vision, as Habakkuk calls it. But I think it ties, like you said, it ties in nicely with faith and the endurance of the faith to endure a death to self of one kind or another, to be able to love like Christ, which ultimately ends in the cross. It's an ultimate total giving and gift of self.
Yeah, and Jim Livingston, although he's not on the camera, he was sitting here and part of the conversation, our seminarian, and he picked up on actually a certain type of faith is not only endurance, but it is patience. And so patience for the will of God to be made clear and, of course, to be adjusted to. And the adjustment was what I was interested in and captured by, and the fact that why were these apostles at the beginning of the gospel text for Sunday increase our faith? I thought, wow, Jesus must reveal something horrifying to them that they would cry out for an increase in faith. And so I went and read the first 5 verses of the 17th chapter of Luke's gospel, and indeed, what he was shockingly saying is that you have to forgive one another. I'm thinking, oh, that shouldn't be news, but then I thought, I bet the most frequently admitted sin and the most difficult challenge for people in the spiritual life, I'm just going to generalize, is, Father, I just can't forgive this, that, or the other thing. Even if it is myself, today people are obsessed with, you have to begin with self-forgiveness, and I'm not denying that. But the fact is that it all hinges around forgiveness. So then I was mentioning, well, what are people always saying to me about why Jesus had to die on the cross? It was for the forgiveness of our sins. Matter of fact, we say this, don't we? Even in the consecration. Yeah? Take it. Let this be poured out for the forgiveness of my blood will be poured out for the forgiveness of your sin. So, sisters and brothers, it sounds to me like the purpose of faith, or the act of forgiving, like Jesus, means to die for the sake of others, especially the others that are responsible for injuring you. Those are the hardest people to die for because you are busy blaming them for hurting you. And so I hadn't maybe thought about faith as the process of
Forgiveness.
and forgiveness as the process of dying to self. And that's the whole ballgame. So.
Yeah. And I have found in the work that I do with people who are dealing with, inner healing, emotional healing, and even physical healing, we have found that the greatest blocking of any of that has to do with unforgiveness.
Yep.
Holding unforgiveness in your heart is the easiest way to get stuck in the spiritual life and in the emotional life.
Now we look at the Lord's Prayer, and he said, when you pray, you should pray this way. So we went through these 5 petitions. But the crux of the thing is, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive others. So there is a condition to our experience of the forgiveness of God, and that is our willingness to forgive others. And there we are, back to the cross and dying to ourselves. So it was there all the time. I guess we shouldn't have been surprised.
I guess we need to not shy away from the suffering we might have to endure, and to ask the Lord to increase our faith, that we might forgive those in our lives that need it.
Right? So that we can be forgiven. Yeah. All right. Peace. Good week.